So, welcome to this episode of the podcast. As you should be able to see on your screen right now, I have a special guest with me, Mr. Paul Standell. Paul, how are we?
Very well, buddy. How are you?
Good. For those listening, for those watching, if you're watching on YouTube, prior to joining this call, we decided to call this episode Your Failure is My Foie Gras, because there is a notion out there that not everybody can make it. Somebody's got to fail somewhere along the line. Hopefully that's not you listening and watching to this. Hopefully that is some poor other sap who didn't listen to the podcast.
Massive loser.
Yeah, that's the loser. So let's kick off, Paul, because we don't need to do all that preamble about who you are and what you do, because we're going to get into that. That's the whole concept of this show. So let's pick up where we left off before we hit record. What's your view on whether people can actually make it? Like, is everybody destined to have an Instagram account and a successful business?
Yeah, mate. Everyone, every single soul has value and can make it. I shouldn't say every single soul has value. That's a terrible place to start. If you haven't made it, you don't have any value as a human. No, look, I'm rather obviously, and no, no, not everyone is going to make it. And it is the harsh thing to say, because you want to encourage people. And I do believe more people. Oh, do I believe this? More people than not can make it. No, I don't even believe that. That's a lie. I don't believe that.
Basically the way around.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think a lot of the people who reach out, so I work in fitness related stuff. I think almost all of them can improve and can be helped. I would actually even say the same for myself or for anyone's content or whatever it is that they do. And so maybe part of it is defined by what they call success. Do they mean a wild following and earning, Richard Branson cash and sitting in the Seychelles and you've renamed them the Branson Islands? No, most people aren't going to do that. Can they have a pretty good living? What do we mean by good living? Well, 100K plus. Yeah. A good chunk of people can do that. Not everyone. Can some people then do 40, 50? Yeah. A bunch more people could probably do that than the 100. And so you kind of work its way down. But ultimately in the online field, it's a platform that tends to suit slightly more outgoing people, I think. Doesn't mean there isn't a place for the more introverted. There is, but I would say it's harder. Because even if you're introverted, maybe, your opinions and the way you write can't be. It's just you might not put your face on the camera quite so much. But so if you steer away from that, if you don't like making content, you don't like writing, you don't like sitting in front of a laptop a bunch, you're not going to like the gig. I think half of it is almost, at least in the fitness industry, the problem comes down to people thinking they can have an online coaching career without an online content career. And that, no. If you want an online coaching career, unless you work for someone else, you need to have an online content career. And that's a whole different thing.
For sure.
That's probably around the reeking.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned about like the introvert thing. So I kind of class myself as a little bit of an introvert. I like writing. I don't mind going on camera. I just kind of, when I get to the point at which I've got to be on camera, I wrote about it in my book. My dad basically told me when I went to a job interview, he said, you got to imagine, like, you're walking in there like you're Stone Cold Steve Austin. You're walking through the curtain. You got like find a little bit of your personality and just crank it up to 11 for that moment. And I was like, all right, okay, maybe that probably doesn't work well in interviews, and you're going to give.
Can't go stunnering everyone and drinking a beer.
You can't clank a couple of beer cans together and say, "Yeah, did I get a job?" But for that moment where you switch on the camera to record the reel or whatever it is, you got to turn something up. Because I think like you did a training for my group probably last year, maybe even a bit longer ago than that, where you're talking about confidence on camera and stuff like that, and you were talking about the fact that you have to kind of bring more life and energy to the camera, because if you just talk like you're talking normally, it's kind of flat and dull, right? Which I guess is, shall we say, where many people are at with their content.
Flat and dull.
So like you've obviously got a background in acting and stuff like that. So that's kind of like come, I guess, naturally to you. Has it been relatively straightforward for you to be a content creator?
No. On one level, you'd think it would be, right? So,
You
as
would.
you say, like I have an act. This shouldn't be a thing. I have an acting degree.
Good.
Acting
Yes.
degrees aren't a real thing, right? You can go. I went to drama school 3 years, and therefore I have a BA, right, in acting, which is bollocks. You can't have a bit of paper that tells you someone can act.
I can act.
Yeah,
Employ
I've made it now. It's basically an Oscar, mate. So you'd think that with that background and spending a lot of my time through life on stage and in front of audiences or cameras and stuff, that should be a pretty obvious, easy transition.
Mm.
But if you went back 4, 5 years and 6 years and looked at my content, you'd be wildly disappointed with what was going on with it. And I think I hadn't really put the two worlds of fitness and performing together for some odd reason. I think it was because I was concerned with being right rather than being interesting or being helpful. Like I was interested in what the science said about fitness. And so if I read a research paper, I'd basically just make a bit of content that almost verbatim spoke like the abstract of a research paper, which is the least interesting thing in the world to anyone who isn't already on PubMed.
Rosso et al. Said.
Dude, yeah, 100%. And I would make everything nuanced to the point of you couldn't do anything with it. And so, it would take me hours. I remember, especially in the early days of Canva, making a post that might be on, I don't know, some kind of the effect of sleep on carbohydrate metabolism, that fascinatingly wonderful topic. And I would spend, it'd be 2 hours reading the paper and highlighting things and then condensing some bits and then, taking a screenshot of some of the graphs that were in it and then dragging them into Canva and making a thing. And so it'd probably take me 4 to 5 hours to make one post that would get 6 likes and no traction. No one would interact with it. No one would reach out. It didn't bring me any leads. So it's not like it didn't do many likes, but I had the leads were coming, just smashing my door down and the cash was rolling in. No, none of that. And it wasn't really until lockdown, so 2020, when things maybe started to change a little bit. And it started actually with a conversation with a guy called Gordon Greenhorn. And we were on a walk, one of those lockdown walks when you could stand 6 feet apart and go for a half an hour walk together. And so we were doing this like once a week just to get out of the house and have a catch up about stuff. And he's like, you should do like a Russell Kane-esque thing. Because he was doing these videos at home where he was, all over the lounge ranting about something. And his position on camera would be over the place. And it was just high energy and funny. And I was like, I think I know what he means by that. And fine, let's go make something. So I started making this series of stuff called Fitness Rants. And they were just, I would have 1 or 2 ideas. It'd be a broad topic. Let's rant about CrossFit. I'd have a couple of bullet pointed things I wanted to say. And then I would literally record for about 20 minutes of just ranting, raving, whatever came to my mind and came out of my mouth would just be thrown out. And then I condensed that down to like 2 to 3 minutes of a bit of a reel of just quick snaps between shots, mainly, hopefully, reasonably funny. And that's the nice thing with social media. No one expects you to be a complete comedian. So it's not like if your joke isn't the best joke anyone's heard that they're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe he said all right. It's like, no, you've got to, as long as you put a small smile on someone's face, that's good enough.
That's what I say to the wife.
And even then sometimes failing. Right. So that started with that. And suddenly these things started getting more engagement. People started laughing and reaching out and sharing and commenting and blah, blah, blah. And I'd like to say that I immediately learned the lesson from that and started, but you'd be wrong again.
You went straight back to PubMed. How can I capitalize on this new engagement?
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
They're really waiting for those graphs now.
Yeah. So then there was this weird period of time where I'd have this just fucking Jekyll and Hyde content where some of it would be going great and doing well. And I was like, okay, I can see this working. And bits that I was still personally interested in, but I hadn't really put the dots together and gone, it's not what I'm talking about that's the problem. It's how I'm talking about it. It's how I'm presenting it. It's how I'm failing to make it feel interesting or relevant to my audience.
Yeah.
Even the idea of thinking of having a specific audience. I was one of those PTs who spent years and years resisting the concept of a niche, right? Because I was like, well, in person, I work with 79-year-old Sally and 22-year-old George, and I can do a good job with all of those people. And that was true. I could, but it took me far, far too long to realize, yes, you might be able to help those people, but you can't hold their attention simultaneously on a social media platform and have them pay attention, because it won't feel relevant and they'll have moved on. And so it wasn't until that started clicking. And again, this was a slow, painful realize. I'd like to think I learned lessons quickly, but I've been a PT since 2011, and I started online in 2014, 15, when it wasn't particularly difficult or challenging. There wasn't much competition in those days, because you could get away with your first Instagram post being a picture of peas in Tupperware and 8 million hashtags attached to it, and that was fine. Someone would be like, "Did you do coaching?" And you're like, "Because I saw your peas, and your peas really, really made me think he's the guy for me."
Listened on that photo.
So it was, I probably would have learned some of these lessons faster if I was starting now, because you kind of would have to. Like the sink or swim part of it would be harsher than it was. But it was a slow, painful thing. And then once that started falling into place, and I started going, okay, I'm aimed at personal trainers and online fitness coaches, and I can help them. And so these are the topics that are relevant. These are the things that are interesting. Okay, how do I then combine shit that is relevant for that audience with an interesting way of saying it?
Yeah.
Aha. There's where the fun stuff lies, right? But that took ages.
It's interesting you mentioned that the Russell Kane thing, bit of humor, was a little bit of a catalyst, albeit a slow catalyst, it seemed. But it ignited some engagement, put it that way. I was chatting to my business mentor the other week, or the other day, whenever it was. And he basically said that his approach to social media, and he's not big on social media, he's an email marketer. So basically, when he says social media, he means Twitter. And his basic approach is, I just want to make someone laugh, because all of the stuff that he does in terms of tactics, strategies, things like that, he does a little bit of it on social media, but most of it is all on email and other mediums. So his really kind of goal is like, if I make someone laugh, then they kind of just get to like me. They want to consume more of that content. Then they're more inclined to jump on the email list, which I thought was quite like an interesting, almost non-strategy whatsoever. How important for you, if you kind of look at it through that perspective, is trying to be funny, entertain people? How much of that is like a big part of your approach to content creation?
Personally, yeah, it's a big part. Does it have to be a part of everyone's? Are you funny? If you're not mildly funny, I probably wouldn't lean into it. Although I think most people have a bit of a sense of humor somewhere, right? So for me, it is though. For me, it is, and that's because I like making inappropriate jokes. I will make dick jokes. I will say shit that plenty of people will be like, "Can't believe you thought you could say that." And when you do that, you are going to have some people negatively comment occasionally on that. And we know what humans are like, right? If you get 100 lovely comments and 1 or 2, oh my God, right? You will have a tendency to want to focus on the, oh my God, as though you've, shot them down or something. But that's the risk that you play. One of the worst things you can probably be on any form of social media or media is boring or uninteresting. So you're trying to find things that you mean. Like, I don't say things that I don't sort of mean, unless I'm being completely facetious with a joke and almost saying the opposite of what I mean, or something like that. But I'm just amplifying it, right? So it's like, whatever opinion I have on something, it's, okay, I like this. Well, I like this is boring. Like, I like this is, okay, great. Like, that's something that you might say while you're out for a walk with your girlfriend and you bit into a new chocolate bar. This is nice, right? And that's fine when you're out for a walk with your girlfriend eating a new chocolate bar. But no one's going to give a shit if that's your opinion on something. So it's, can you say it in a way that is just ever so slightly more engaging than that. And that involves a bit of thought, and it involves being a bit playful with things. And trying to do one on the fly never goes overly well. So we'll see what comes up. Like, I have a can of White Monster in front of me because it's the best of the monsters, right? White Monster and the Lewis Hamilton Monster.
I'll say Lewis Hamilton is taking the crown.
Those two for me are tied, right? Anyone who drinks the original Monster flavor,
the black can,
is a fucking psychopath. You don't need reminding of a Jaeger bomb at midday, right? And that's the only thing that thing reminds anyone sane of, right? Yeah. So
I think even Monster are embarrassed by that flavor.
They really are. It's just a legacy brand at this point that they keep it there because they feel they should, but really they should discontinue it. That is just a slightly more interesting way of saying the same point. We could have both just said, I like the Lewis Hamilton one the most, but that wouldn't be interesting. The more I've thought about this, and I'm going to relate this to fitness stuff. In the fitness world, if you're an in-person personal trainer, once you've had a client for longer than a week or two, half of your sessions are spent talking bollocks. They're talking about Game of Thrones, the football, someone's Tinder profile, whatever, right? It's filling the gap with normal human conversation. And sometimes personal trainers look down on that as though that's a bad part. Oh, I should be talking more about moment arms and fucking humeruses, right, the entire time. And that's not true. Like, obviously, you need to know the technical parts of your job, but the relationship building of part is essential to a personal relationship in any kind of career where you're a coach, a mentor, or something kind of like that. And I was like, well, online, there isn't that opportunity to just have a conversation with someone in quite the same way. You have to sort of artificially create the conditions where someone might have a conversation with you. And I think it's the same thing as talking about Game of Thrones and football or whatever. Mm-hmm. You just have to amplify it a bit. Let's use Instagram stories as the example for it, of giving us a bit of the behind the scenes chat that you might get in a personal training session when you're talking shit between sets, right? It's just giving that little opinion of, I can't believe you thought that thing was good. It's the worst thing I've ever seen since ever, right? And you're trying to bait that little engagement. So someone that agrees with you laughs and reaches out and goes, yeah. Or someone who disagrees and thinks the Black Monster is the greatest one because they're clearly a psychopath, you just block immediately and you never talk to that human again, right? But you're starting to create these relationships that allow you over time to potentially develop that person into a lead and part of your business, because people who interact with you regularly in your stories, I think unless they're friends or family, are more likely to buy something from you statistically than people who aren't watching those stories, who aren't engaging with you. And so you have to make those things interesting and fun for them to watch. And fun usually means kind of humorous most of the time. And you have opinions on shit, because of course you do. There's a reason you're wearing the top that you're wearing, or that you write with this pen that I'm writing with right now. I really like writing with this pen. If you brought me a Bic, I'm going to dunk your head in a blender. Bics are the worst thing to write with you can just fuck about with that stuff, right? I also have a now cold coffee in front of me, because that's right, I have a coffee and a Monster, because I like to live up to the stereotype of fitness people just having caffeine addictions. And
I mean, it is almost 3 PM, so you are not planning on sleeping today.
Yeah, I have a problem, which I could lean into on that. But the coffee bit, how many pretentious people hate on Starbucks all the time and do this?
I do.
Yeah. So Simon's one of those people. Yeah, right. Exactly. So we can lean into these bits where he's like, he just described it as gear oil, whereas I could describe him as like a hipster, pretentious, wannabe socialite prick. Or I don't know. I probably wouldn't have gone with that one. It's not my favorite sentence. It's not. I wish I hadn't said
haircut and the beard.
I'm expecting Simon to put his hair into a man bun and ride a penny farthing. There you go. That's what
I've got the MacBook. I've got the hair. I've got the beard. I've got the wanky coffee. I'm all bought in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it's funny, like what you're talking about there is like one of the things that kind of popped into my head is this thing that people often basically try and get tips on is, how do I find my voice and all that sort of stuff in their content. And I often think that opinions are voice. Yeah. Because like you just said, like the way you have an opinion on something, that is how you describe it. Like I sent out an email this morning, which I haven't looked at the stats, but I reckon it's going to trigger a bunch of unsubscribes, because I put a very, I didn't think it was that bad of a joke.
Well,
But
let's find out.
someone sent me basically a cold DM pitch yesterday morning. And instead of just deleting it and blocking them and putting them in spam, I replied. And I gave them 15 points of why their email was bad. I broke it down for them.
Very good.
They might be crying. I don't know. I don't care either. But in the email that I then wrote about this whole thing, I said the email was bad. It was badder than a bad thing. It was worse than hiring Jeffrey Epstein to teach sex ed to high school kids.
And I'd made that joke. I like that joke.
I think that might get a few unsubscribes. Well, I thought it was funny. But again, like when you're saying like you can't have a conversation, that's me getting an opinion, like a sense of humor. I could have just said the email was bad, and it was. That would be factually correct. But getting some voice and some personality, just kind of like this random thing. Like I thought, like, well, what's really bad? Okay, well, Jeffrey Epstein, he wasn't a nice chap, was he? And then, okay, well, how could I create a bad scenario based on him? Okay, cool. That'll work. Let's throw that in, and let's not like. When I write an email or a caption or whatever, one of the things I came to like a little epiphany yesterday where, do you know, people have like the Venn diagrams where it's like content you love, content your audience loves, and then it meets somewhere in the middle. I'm like, bollocks. So I create what I want to create, and if you like it, you like it. That's basically where I'm at right now. So I'll write the email the way I want to write the email. I'll make the reel the way I want to record the reel or the caption. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. Now, obviously, I'm going to caveat that by saying that I'm clearly making content about topics that I think you're interested in or are of relevance. But the way I describe it is my voice. It's not a watered down thing to try and appeal to a mass group of people or try to capture as much adulation as possible. It's just like, right, this is a topic I think you're interested in. This is a problem I think you struggle with. This is the content I want to make about that topic. And that's kind of like the way I approach stuff now. And it alienates a few people, but that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, because the worst thing you can be is unmemorable, right? Like people will never remember the dude who described something as bad unless they're Michael Jackson. Right? Like that's not going to happen. It's such an unmemorable line in every way, shape or form. We all use it in day-to-day life and that's fine, but you don't even remember you using it because it's that fucking unmemorable. Right? Exactly. And it's just those bits of going like, you are a small part of someone else's day and you will be an even smaller part of their day if you give them no reason to remember you. Yeah. And that means you have to risk saying it in a way that not everyone's going to like.
Yeah.
But that's fine because the people who then do like you will start to love you more than just like you. And then you'll become the go-to guy for them in whatever field you happen to work in and sell things in, provided you combine the stuff that has you and your personality and your style with proof that you're good at what you do in a way that they feel like relates to them.
Yeah.
If you can combine those two things and do it over time, you'll be grand.
Yeah, because it's basically Mr. Cialdini's principles of persuasion, right? So assuming that you can do what you say you claim you do, people buy from who they like. So if you never show personality, if you never show opinion, people have got nothing to like other than facts that you share, which...
I love his facts. He's got the best facts. I mean, you have to have a lot of facts before you're the best guy for facts.
Best fact ever. And I think there's also like the different platforms as well offer you different opportunities to get voice and opinions across. So I'll give you an example, like Threads, for example, or Twitter, or whichever one you want to use, is I use that for trolling. I never thought I would be a troll. I never thought I'd be a troll, but I quite enjoy it. I have to say. People said when Threads first came out, I said, so great, there's no trolls. I was like, that's why this platform is boring.
Simon heard opportunity.
That's why this platform is boring, because we're all just got these pseudo-philosophical kind of watered down Marcus Aurelius meditations going out there. And
Yeah.
then there's one guy who made a post. I commented on yesterday. He said, "Clients are the one thing that give you energy and drain you of energy." And I said,
The one thing.
and also a big dinner, because I get a lot of calories, which gives me
Yeah,
energy,
yeah,
but I also feel like a nap.
yeah, yeah.
So, but I feel my job on Threads is to troll people's pointless platitudes, and that does get me quite a few like people comment and they laugh and stuff like that, and it gets you a little bit of attention. Now, I didn't do it to get attention. I did it because I just hated all this stuff, this content being posted.
I did it out of love for
Yeah,
the game.
yeah. I just wanted to make some people cry.
Yeah, I love trolling people, and I refuse to apologize for that.
Indeed. But again, like voice and opinion, I think it's like vital. Otherwise, you end up, like you say, in that kind of like nobody cares territory, I think.
Yeah, and you can
Now,
just start with the thing with like, this is worse than, and then what's it worse than? Come up with something. I know you can come up with something. It might still be shit, but you can go. And then, like, sometimes if I'm writing a thing and nothing is coming to me as anything that makes me smile or laugh, I will just leave a placeholder in that says worse. I'll just put it in capitals, worse than, and then I'll just come back to it and be like, I know I need to put something mildly interesting in here.
yeah.
Like,
And I think as well, like when you start sharing opinions, is that you find that you've got lots of opinions that you just don't voice, and
yeah,
like you've even people like who think that I could never be funny or whatever. You've probably got like stuff milling around in your head that's actually quite funny. You're just not saying it.
yeah.
So just I don't know, just let it roll. But anyway, before we go down this rabbit hole of trolls, let's wind back to probably what we should have started the podcast with. But it's good. I like a little bit of a tangent. So you mentioned that you became a PT in 2011, online 2014-15, right?
Something like that. Yeah.
So you briefly mentioned you could just take pictures of peas and you'd be all right. Like
The good old days.
I'm interested in understanding, like, when you decided to say, I'm going to go and do this online thing, or I'm going to dabble a little bit with social media. What was like, you're in a situation then where there wasn't a lot of people, if any, saying, this is how you do social media marketing. Here's a course. Here's this.
There was
here's
none.
that. It just didn't exist, right?
John Goodman, if you remember, John Goodman was probably maybe the only guy.
So, like, what was?
And I ignored him when I should have probably been learning from him.
So, what was your thought process? Did you have any sort of plan? Did you just get your abs out and hope?
You're already giving me too much credit. What was your thought process? Implies a thought process.
Sure.
I don't know that there was one. Like to some degree, I was just sort of copying a little bit of what I saw, which is such a common trope for at least PTs when starting out online. They're like, well, I see other coaches doing this thing, so I guess I'll do those things. I didn't know how to price the products. I had two online coaching packages. One was £65 a month, and then my premium one was £85 a month. And to this day, no idea what the difference between them really was. So that's good. I had an online coach myself, so I was like, well, I'll just sort of copy the model that he's kind of using, and I guess I need spreadsheets, and I'll have to email. And well, he sort of puts up pictures of himself or a lift or a thing, and has, here's some facts about the deadlift or whatever was kind of going on. And it was sort of doing that. And I mean, I did a combination of in-person and online together for years. So it was kind of like an add-on really to what I was already doing with my in-person thing. To some degree, it was also, I think, a place where I could feel like I was doing work that wasn't walking the gym floor and talking to people, which would have probably been a better use of my time in terms of the payoff that it would have, the amount of hours spent making things that didn't bring in that many clients versus something else. Yeah, I probably should have used my time differently with hindsight. But I was kind of, narcissistically enjoying it, I suppose, and sharing those things. And social media stuff wasn't what it was. Instagram only, when did it start? 2015 or something like that?
Something like that, 14, 15, yeah.
Yeah, it's in that kind of era, right? So like Facebook was the main place. initially. There was no video editing. There was nothing, right? It was stories weren't a thing. It was
back in the day, you could do Facebook ads
yeah,
for like weight loss, which you could
yeah.
basically just say, "Hey, fatty, click this link and lose some weight." It's like you could literally say anything. It was the
I'll be honest,
Wild
that
West.
ad would work.
Yeah, it was like you could just do anything. It was crazy. Like the
The good old
ads
days.
that would pop up and like people would create. It's like nuts. Like think about it. There's just zero chance
Yeah.
of you doing. I mean, I
You can't
wouldn't.
share a before and after photo on an ad anymore.
Just to clarify, I wouldn't advocate doing that
I
now
would
or
do it.
then. So
Do it right now.
I'm saying it was an example. But yes, anyway.
He would actually say, "Dear fatty," not "Hey fatty," just to be more. So yeah, so it was just sharing a bit of my own stuff. I actually think sometimes, at least in the fitness industry, there's a lot of people trying to jump into being online almost too soon because they actually haven't done the job long enough in many times to have opinions on things, right? Their opinions are really just other people's opinions that they've read and regurgitated, and if you kind of try to push them on it, they don't really know what they stand for. They don't really have a message. They don't really feel strongly about something or not, or have that opinion where they could say, those things that people are arguing about on the internet, they don't fucking matter, which is an opinion as well, right? They're just sort of like, you might need to spend some time building confidence in your technical ability as a PT and generating some experience before moving online so that you can have these opinions on stuff and feel okay with what you're saying. So I was possibly fortunate in that regard, in that it wasn't a thing anyone was particularly doing or taking serious. It was almost like just a tag on that might bring an extra grand in a month type thing. And it was then just doing that for fucking ages, for years, really. As it was just a tag on kind of thing. I was still personally interested in technically being a better PT. And I thought, well, if I'm a good PT, then the clients will come. And there is some truth to that, but only some. And then you start gradually to moan and whinge about people who are doing better because, frankly, they're better at marketing and talking to people than you are. But you haven't realized that yet. Sure. And so then you go, if you're anything like me anyway, you go through a phase where you complain about human beings. And why does everyone fall for these fucking stupid, while forgetting to notice the times you're falling for it? Moaning about pain points, moaning about what humans, wishing the human race was somehow different than it is.
Yeah.
And then you start to come to realize, okay, no, maybe it's me. Maybe I need to accept what reality is like and what human beings are like, and I can actually lean into this. And then selling stuff is only sleazy if your product is shit. Like if what you do lives up to the billing, there's nothing sleazy in telling people how great it is by showing them clients who've gone through great transformations, stories that they can relate to and see themselves in, stuff that puts a smile on their face, not condescending to them or lecturing or all the rest of the stuff that usually most of the fitness industry wants to do with shit. And so it was that kind of gradual realization of, all of the stuff that makes me a good coach, that needs to be more in the coaching once a person has come through the door, not necessarily all the crap that gets them in the door in the first instance. Sure. You need some technical knowledge because pretty much everyone is going to make some technical posts on something at some point, whether it's particular ways of structuring an email or whether it's here's how to do a deadlift or how to whatever. Pretty much everyone's going to have some how-tos of some kind. But even within those, you still need to know how to frame them in an interesting way, in a way that still feels relevant for why the fuck should I do a deadlift exactly? Well, are you trying to have the sexiest ass in GAY, or do you want it so you can pick your grandkid up off the floor? Because they're different things. And trying to understand those bits is still important when you go through. So it was just a slow, gradual changing of my realization of those bits. There was no epiphany moment particularly for me. I think it started to change. Mike Samuels has actually been a client of mine for ages, so paying a bit more attention to what he was kind of saying and doing. I dated a girl called Laura Girl Gaines, who had a business degree and was actually really good at that kind of stuff. And I started to go, okay. And I started to take lessons and I worked for the muscle mentors and I learned a bit more of this. And then And through all this, Gordon, the guy we mentioned earlier, told me to do Russell Kane stuff, was then the videographer for Ali Abdaal, big YouTuber with like 4 million subscribers or whatever the fuck he's on these days. And some of the lessons that were coming from that, and then realizing, oh, I have a performing background. Oh, I can do some of this. I sort of naturally know how to, there's this dormant part of me that's been fucking ignored for ages. And I can just bring that in. And once you then realize that, then the benefit of the performing background comes in trusting sort of my judgment with how to read something or say something out loud, or how a script might flow. Mm-hmm. If you've spent lots of your life reading in any format, especially fiction-y things, right? So that could be scripts or fiction stuff, or good nonfiction, I would say, actually, as well. You will innately start to have more of a feel for good sentences and shit sentences, and whether something flows. And, you know, the advice, and it's not bad advice, to read something that you've written out loud. I always think that sucks if someone's dyslexic, because you're like, they're so screwed, they can't take part in this particular way. But, and I've heard some people read out loud, and it's not always great. I get to take that bit for granted. I can read something out loud that I've not come across and usually do all right with it. And so you start to kind of understand that, or, you know, how to play with a camera a little bit, or when to fuck around with pitch and tone. And, you know, one of the things you'll see in film or theater stuff is people will play with periods of tension and silence, and it won't all be loud, right? But you kind of, I would always say in those bits, you sort of have to earn tension and silence. And dead space in most social media things is just a place people are leaving because you haven't built tension. That 2 seconds of silence is not acting as suspense. It's just fucking boring, right? Yeah, like people have gone, right? So there are just lessons in storytelling and shit kind of like that you sort of innately have of, if you wanted to use a quiet moment in social media content, you could, but you better have earned it. It better have follow up from this build of tension, or there's this intriguing moment as the camera pans to reveal, right? Or there needs to be something that is keeping me waiting to see what's about to happen on that. And that's fucking hard to do in a short form anything. So being able to play with those bits, once I started piecing those things together, became, I think, easier than maybe someone who didn't have a performing background.
Got it.
But it took me like 10 years to have that realization, which is frankly depressing.
Basically overnight, right?
Exactly.
So let's go hypothetical. So that was your journey from someone who has a little bit of a performance background in a era, let's say, when social media was less saturated, Instagram wasn't even a thing, just starting out. You could do a lot of things and kind of like get away with it.
Yeah.
Let's imagine then that you're a coach, whatever niche. Let's say fitness, because that's your background, but you haven't got a performing background, and you're now thinking about dipping your toe into the online water as it is today, with 55 million different platforms, all different formats, competing for attention. What would be your approach now to social media and trying to get your message out there?
I would start still with peas. Tupperware of peas, which is the key. No, so I think this depends on if the person has experience yet, right? Like if I was starting as a PT and I was still working in person, I wanted to get some experience, and I also simultaneously was doing a bit of an online thing, but I wasn't sure where to start. I think I'd start actually by just sharing my own personal fitness crap and trying to figure out how to do that in an interesting way. Because I don't have any client results yet, I don't have this. So I'd use myself as a bit of a guinea pig. I'd go through some transformation stuff. I'd document, this is me, 30 days doing, right? And I'd try and figure out, how do I have a voice? How do I have an opinion? And it's easy to have an opinion when you're putting yourself through something because you're experiencing it. So you will naturally have a fucking opinion, right? Hey, this fucking sucks, or this is great, or that's interesting, I didn't expect, right? So I would use myself, and I would probably try and document that whilst I also worked in person and built some results. So that would be one. Let's though assume that someone has some experience, they already have been doing it a little while, and they're wanting to go into the online thing, and then they're starting out. I think you said they sort of know who they want to work with, because that bit's going to matter, right? If you don't know who you want to work with, it's hard to evaluate whether the phrases that you're using and the things that you think they care about, they're going to care about, and all the rest of that stuff. So let's presume niche a little bit as well. I would actually start by writing every day. And I would be like, I'm going to do 2 hours a day of sitting in front of the computer and writing stuff. And I think that could be of anything almost, right? That could be, I'm going to do some emails. I'm going to do some posts. I'm going to do some reel scripts. I'm going to make a lead magnet. I'm going to whatever. Because I think, at least personally, my own process for making content, all of it starts with writing shit. I repurpose everything as every other style of content that I could feasibly make it. So it's an email, it's a reel, it's a carousel, it's a caption on a post, right? I'll just space them a little bit because no one cares, right? So if
Instagram's algorithm has anything to say, no one will see it either.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm like, a good bit of content is a good bit of content.
For sure.
Whatever format it is. Now, obviously, if you want to turn it into a reel, then you have to know how to do that visually and make it interesting and all those things. But I should be able, if you make a reel, I should be able to pull the transcript from your reel and put it on paper and go, does that read well? If your transcript has ooh, right, and that you're not being facetious or funny with it, you fucked up. Those things shouldn't be in the final draft of your particular edit. They can be in a podcast because we're 40 minutes into this thing, and no one's expecting us to be that polished on a chat that we're not going to say exactly. We'd be screwed. So it's not that every bit of content has to be that way, but certainly your video stuff doesn't. Certainly on your social media, and even if you're making longer form stuff for YouTube. When I have conversations with Gordon YouTubers, it's all of these guys employ full-time script writers because it's one of the most important things to have there. Of like, when are we losing people? What's happening in the scene, in the script at that point? Is it like, what's going on? So I think write that shit out, and it's then practicing. And you go, okay, well, what should I write about? Well, presumably you're having client check-ins every week with some people or interactions. What are they complaining about? What are they struggling with? Right? If you have Zoom calls with people, Zoom has like note takers, AI note takers that exist on there, and they will turn it into, these were the pain points that came up in this call. Put all those in a writing place. I write with an app called Scrivener. I keep notes on my phone just in notes. So any idea that jumps to me, I just have one page in there called content ideas, and I'll scribble whatever is in that. And once a week, usually, I'll go through it and be like, I like that. Let's pull that out. We'll start. And then I'll move it over to Scrivener and start the process in there. I used to just have them as separate notes, and then you lose them all because now I have like 8,000 notes and I'm not going back to find the good ones.
I think I've got like 536 labeled content ideas.
Yeah, exactly. This is the issue, isn't it? You're like, oh, fuck. And so I'm confident that if I took the time to go through my notes, there's some good stuff in there. There'll be some good ideas. I don't want to. That sounds like a really shit job. So just put it in one space and don't make the mistake that we've made, right? And you'll be fine. So it's those pain points that are coming up. And then, okay, can I turn those into stories? Client win here. All right, well, where's the story in the transfer? Because you can do transformation-y stuff that doesn't have to just be the before and after picture. It's really the journey of the person as they go through it and the sort of shit present or past to the better life that they now have as they're going through this process, even if they're not fucking there yet, right? It's, and it's not enough to say, oh, they feel shit about themselves. Okay, that's great, but that's vague as all hell. So in what way do they feel shit about themselves? Is it, some guy who keeps trying to get back into those size 32 jeans, but the fucking old beer belly's hanging out of an hour and he's onto his fourth notch in the belt, and he's noticed that his wife keeps turning the lights off every time they have sex now, and like, how does he start to feel? What's his internal monologue as he goes through that? He's like, I actually do look like Barry from EastEnders now rather than Channing Tatum. This ain't going so well, right?
If you're American, Google that.
Sean Williams, is it Sean Williamson? I think isn't it? Fantastic, man. I will not have a bad word said against Barry, even though I used him to as not what you want to look like. But can you paint the picture for the person in a way that they see themselves in it? And people don't paint pictures in words like bad and now I feel bad about myself. Okay, you might start there, but in what way do they feel bad about themselves? Paint that for me. Paint what they feel like when they're doing whatever it is that they're doing. And so you've kind of created a bit of a world that feels shit that the person reading it relates to. If they're in that niche, they should understand and recognize a lot of that.
Yeah, I
And
think
then you make go for it.
sorry to interrupt. I think that's like one of the. I just wanted to like stop on that because that's one of like the key things that when I'm coaching people, that's one of the key things that pops up all the time. And people ask for like, well, how do I write better copy? And like you say, you go read books, whether they're copywriting books or fiction books or whatever. You read more and you kind of absorb that. One of the things that I think that someone could do straight away is be specific.
Yep.
Because one of the obviously like people that I'm working with, they'll say stuff like, I'll use an example from like my world. Like someone might say, I don't know, buy my course and you'll get great results.
Yeah.
What results?
What results? Yeah, exactly.
What results might those be? So
great ones, Simon. Great ones.
So you've got to be specific. What outcome can I expect? Is it that I'm going to be able to afford to, I don't know, live the high life in Aruba and sip protein shakes on the beach while, my business runs itself in the background, right? That could be a result. Nice result. I'd like that.
This is very niche. Aruba and protein shakes have never been put into a sentence before, I don't think.
Do you know what? And this is another thing, right? It's a tangent, but worthwhile, right? Aruba is not, it's a random reference, but it's not that random for me personally.
Aruba, it's that song, isn't it? That starts with Aruba, Havana.
No, I don't know.
Is that not? The other people know this. That's one of the only reasons I know Aruba. Anyway, carry on with your Aruba story.
So all of my like weird references come from things that I've seen or heard or whatever, read from my teenage and early 20s.
Yeah.
I still am and was a huge fan of the TV show Bottom with Rick Mayall and Aid Edmonds. Most of my little references I've kind of like snippets from there. So I think in one episode they talked about buggering off to Aruba. So nice. I steal that one. I keep using it. And all those little sorts of things. But it allows you to be, and the sipping protein shakes on a beach was someone asked me when I was first thinking of starting my own business, you had to do one of those stupid kind of like,
paint the future for
perfect
day. Yeah.
And I was like, this is nonsense. So I just made this stuff up about, I wake up in the morning, I got, 4 supermodels either side of me. I'm snorting coke off their bellies or whatever.
Yeah. Good times.
And then, so I made all this stuff up. And one of the things I made up was I'm just sipping protein shakes on the beach.
Aruba.
But yeah, like I think like being specific is a crucial thing, but like picking like weird references from
that's your voice
you've experienced. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, going back to that point is that being specific, and a lot of people in fitness say build muscle, lose weight. True, but everybody says that. So how can you be a little bit more specific? Can you be a little bit more niche specific with that statement, that headline, whatever it is? And I think like, I know I cut across maybe what you were about to say, but I think that's really important to like stick on is the copywriting side of thing is crucially important, and being able to add that specificity, I believe is the word.
Well said. Okay. Yeah, no, it's that, as Simon's just said, we're like, build muscle, lose fat. Well, losing fat for, I don't know, some Weight Watchers people, they're going to have a different reference for losing fat. And that could be, lose 13 pounds off your tummy so you look more like Julia Roberts. I don't fucking know what Julia Roberts looks like these days. I'm pulling things out of my ass that I think a Weight Watchers person might understand a reference for, right? That's going to be different. Yes, Chris, we'll go with it, right? Versus losing fat for, some 25-year-old who wants to look like The Rock. We're going to use a different bunch of words, even though for both we're saying lose fat. Mm-hmm. And in both, they need to be in a calorie deficit and they need to do all the things that fitness people know they need to be in. But the references and how we've been specific is a combination of the weird references that you like to use, because they're usually your voice, with, will that actually work for this audience? Right? Like using Bottom references, if Simon worked only in the Philippines, right, is probably That's getting niche.
Yeah. To be fair, it's already quite niche because I imagine
Yeah.
if you're below a certain age, you've got no
Yeah,
idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It's depressing that a bunch of people won't know who Rick Mail is, and that's
Yeah.
just not acceptable in life, just in general.
Indeed. Sad times.
But yeah, specificity is huge, and I couldn't agree more. Just that part of starting to go, it's trying to look through anything that you've written and gone, which of this just sounds vague, could apply to anyone, doesn't have any detail in it. And even if you can't come up with something in that moment, just make a note to come back to that little bit and go, I need to say something better than fucking that. Right?
Yeah.
And come back.
I've got a question then, leaning on for that, about your content creation process. Like, how much time do you give both the actual creation process? Let's just say, ignore the videotaping and stuff like that for now, just the writing of the transcript or the caption. Firstly, that how much do you allocate for that? And then, as like a secondary timing question, how far in advance of actually pushing the thing out do you work? Is it on the day, or do you kind of give yourself breathing room to come back to it later and edit it? Like, what's your process around that sort of stuff?
It's a bit of both, to be honest. I've played with sort of both, of just doing it on the day and doing a bit, and it sort of ends up being a bit of a combination. Occasionally something comes in, you're like, I can make something on that right now, right? And you just have an idea and you just bosh it out, and sometimes it does great, sometimes it's just fine, whatever, right? But you absolutely will have ones, I think. They're usually caption-based, some things that might go along a post, or they could be, just something you do in a story or what have you. Most of mine, my process is, as we kind of said, vomiting ideas into the Notes app. And then once a week, I'll pull the ideas and take those and stick them into my Scrivener writing app, which has another one which just says ideas. And then underneath that, I have folders for emails, another folder for carousels, folder for reel, folder for reaction reel, folder for testimonials. And within each of those folders is then just a page for each different thing that is kind of being made. So once I've got the idea, I pretty much usually then riff on it in the little ideas section until I've got a first draft. And then I will usually leave it unless I'm like, I can actually just get this one out, right? So I'm pretty confident this is quite close. So I'll usually do like 3 to 5 different ones where I'll first draft and just vomit at stuff. And usually 50-60% of it I'll be happy with, and then the other 50-60 needs to be tweaked, sometimes more, sometimes less. Like sometimes you have a good one and you're like, I don't need to change much in this, and this is well done me, right? Other times you're like, this is fucking shite, and I'm bored myself. Or this doesn't really have a clear point to it, you're trying to make too many things. So that then will, once I've redrafted it at least once, usually twice, I'll then pop it into, okay, I'm going to make an email, a carousel, a reel, etc. Emails, I tend to, once I've got like 4 or 5, I will then schedule them in advance. My current emailing thing is like twice a week, right? So they'll just get kind of scheduled, especially if I'm traveling any time in the near future. I'll make sure that there's a bunch of those ready to go. Occasionally, if we've had a bunch of courses release and what have you, it's like, okay, I've let them catch back up. All right, all the emails done. Okay, I need to write another bunch of new ones. But there's 5 or 6 that can just be tweaked a little bit, but they're pretty much ready to go. They're almost ready to go out. So emails, I'll tend to schedule a bunch in advance and have that. Reels will still take a lot of the written stuff, and take that effectively text or script, stick them into my reel section, and then tweak slightly. Usually not too much needs tweaking to turn an email into a reel. Like depending on how you make your reels, I just do a lot of talking to camera ones with cuts and bits and pieces, and trust that most of the way I say things or tell a story will be engaging enough. But if I was to make ones where more things were happening, I'd have to come up with a bit more of like shot list. This has to be here. I'm going to do this at this point. Okay, that's going to cut to a voiceover showing this bit. So then I'm going to have to record. Right. So I need to know what the script is in order to know how that flows through. And then I wait until I've got like 8 reels at least ready to go. And once a month, I will bosh them all out, and then they get slung over to my lovely Filipino video editor, right? Who then takes over, who does that bit for me. I would say if you're first getting into it, do some of your own video editing for a bit. You will learn a lot about being on camera, what's good, what's not. Once you've then got, I don't know, a couple of months of experience under your belt, and if you've got the income to do it, having a video editor can save you a shitload of time. So it's one of the few things I would recommend people get reasonably early on if they can, especially when they're from the Philippines, because they're dirt cheap, and long may that continue.
What was the big advocate of slavery?
Yeah, yeah, 100%. You know, when you're rooting for a country not to have democracy, it's never a good sign. I would like them to have it, but in like 20 years' time. This is definitely getting me cancelled. These are those opinions. Remember that? Right, you're either going to be laughing or thinking I'm an asshole.
Social Mavericks podcast does not endorse any of these opinions.
Yeah, exactly. So I would do that. I also then save. So I do reaction reels. So reacting to other people that the fitness industry will follow and watch. So the Eddie Aboos of this world are currently the kind of big ones of that. All I do,
sweet potato. Yeah,
right?
That's
It's
huge.
fucking shit. It's shit.
I've only seen like maybe 2 of his reels, and he was just wafting a sweet potato. It's
Right,
a sweet potato. I was like,
They're so-
oh, no,
they're
it is. What
just
the fuck is your
fucking
point?
One of his that I was his just talking about how ice cream is fucking shit, right? You just need to replace it with an egg. His solution for an
What a fucking clown.
yeah, I was like, this is fantastic. But I will say,
freeze very well.
yeah. I don't think it was even meaning to like lick it. It was like, no, just like a hard-boiled egg. So you try and follow a bunch of people that you've got to still think, am I reacting to people that my niche know about and care about? That's the pertinent part of that. So if we were talking about Weight Watchers-y stuff again, a skit from Loose Women, react to that, right? Don't react to fucking some bodybuilder said this, because that's going to be dumb, right? So understand who your niche and audience follows within that thing and then react to those bits. I just save them in another folder on my Instagram called shit to react to in the saved area.
Idiots.
Right? Yeah, fucking idiot, right? And it's either people I really disagree with or occasionally people I agree with or like something of, because I'll try and occasionally do one that I agree with just for the sake of not being a complete troll. But and then again, once a month, I will bosh out a bunch of those. So I will try and have each month 16 videos, 8 reactions, 8 waffly things that will also an email, right? And then it will also be turning those same fuckers into carousels and stuff. Carousels take longest to make. I would generally, if I would still do my video editing, reels would take just as long, in fairness. But because I outsource that now, carousels are the longest bastards. And they're not long because you have to change all that much about the script, but you have to change annoying little bits to make it fit the fucking text in the thing. So that sentence that you had that was you really like the sound of, you're now like, I need to chop 2 words out of it. Otherwise it doesn't fit on that, or I'll have to shrink the text, and that's going to, right? So you're making these kind of like slight little tweaks that you might need to do just to make it fit the format.
Little tip for you: just ever so slightly change the letter spacing, and you'll find.
Oh, I've tried a bunch of that a little bit. I do that sometimes as well. So that's actually a good one though, because that again, one of those other lessons that took me far too long to learn. There's a theme here to whatever success I've had. It's been slowly, painfully gained. So the carousels within that one. They take them on. So that's the kind of rough process for most of those. I would then say I try and do 1 or 2 a week. And sometimes these are just in stories of whatever's come in check-ins for the week. So that could just be a before and after photo of someone that I'll just write a bit of a caption for. What if they said anything in the check-in? Oh, that was a nice little kind of comment or emotional point that I could touch on and tie some things in. Or I'll go back to their very first application and see what the pain points were in their opening application. Is there something in that I can nick? Like, what can I tie together from some of this? That one I'll just do on the day, and that will take 20 minutes or whatever it takes to bosh that guy out. So like that's the general gist of sort of a process. Does that make any sense? Does that even sound like a process?
And just to kind of give people different a few different options, right? Because I think one of the things that I've certainly found, probably the same for you, is that you figure out your process by saying, okay, well, that guy does that, so let me try that. That didn't work, but that bit did. So I'll keep that bit, I'll ditch that bit. So for me, personally, I write emails on the day I send them. So if it's like it's the first thing I do in the morning is I write my marketing email. And at the moment, I typically do that on my treadmill. Oh, not my treadmill, the gym's treadmill. I don't own it. a treadmill in a gym. And so basically the reason for that is because I like my emails to be almost like a continuous story that my readers are keeping up to speed with the goings on of my daily life. And it gives me the flexibility to be able to react to something and talk about that. So, for example, I used to go down the route of, let's say, launching a course, and I'd have like 9 emails planned. But then like stuff happens in that launch that you don't expect. Like maybe something goes really well, or maybe something doesn't go really well. You can actually like make references to those things, and it keeps it, for me at least, a little bit. I I kind of run out of steam if I have to write lots of stuff in advance. So it just kind of keeps it fresh for me. It's probably the thing that, along with my newsletter, that I enjoy the most is the daily email and stuff like that. So for me, it's kind of like a pleasurable thing to do. I don't feel like it's like a lot of people who don't write emails. They see it as a chore. Whereas for me, I actually quite like it. So I kind of do that. And it's also then like take it.
Have you always done daily email? When did you start? What was the process behind the thought of daily?
So in 2018, I went to a business mastermind, and it was shit. But one of the talks was useful.
Yeah.
In the 5 days of the
5 days, and there was one good talk.
It was 5 days, and it was like there was like a small group of people, and they rented some sort of like old mansion-y thing in just outside of Bath, and we stayed there for 5 days, and then they did little presentation-y things, and like there was this whole like the guy was on like who was running it. I don't know if he's got some sort of like hard on for Tony Robbins or whatever, but there was all like chanting in the morning,
cold walking,
and they're all like standing in a circle, holding hands and chanting.
No,
and I just stood there, just looking at them all, going, "What the fuck is this?" And then he had this thing like every time he walked through a doorway, he'd smack the door frame and go whoop like that. I said, "Dude, why do you whack the door frame and go whoop every time you walk, like Rick fucking Flair when you walk through the door?" He's like, "So I'm bringing my best energy when I walk in the room."
I hate him out of principle.
You prick.
Yeah.
But anyway,
you know when you carry on. Otherwise, we'll just start slagging this guy.
So one of the talks was by a guy called Joe Persia, who he doesn't so much write fitness stuff now, but that was his big thing back in 2018. He was a PT, online coach, switched to copywriting. A little bit similar journey to Mike Samuels, but I guess at different times. And he lives in America and so on. So I was kind of like, everything he said like made sense to me about sending emails, practicing writing emails, whatever. And so he basically said, like, just write something every single day. Doesn't matter if you hit send or not, but he'd encourage you to say, like, hit send, like, just don't bottle it and not press send. But he said, like, just keep writing. So I said, right, okay, I'm going to write something every single day now. And so for maybe 2 or 3 years, that I sent probably an email every single day for 2 or 3 years. And then I kind of like, I kept doing it, but I wasn't as strict. Like if I did 5 or if I did 6, I wasn't like, beating myself up about it. And now it's kind of like probably 6 or 7. But it was literally that process of him saying, you will get better at this if you do it a lot. All right, that makes sense.
That makes sense.
I'll do that.
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, like you said earlier, like writing and all that sort of stuff is basically one of the key skills that helps you create good content. The fact that I went to that terrible mastermind, but I got that one nugget of a talk that I think that like, if I hadn't gone to that and if I hadn't have listened to that talk, then I probably would have done something completely different and things would have been a whole lot different. Yeah. So for me, like that writing daily is a really big thing. in terms of content creation, I used to do all the thing of like batch content creation and stuff like that. But similarly, like the emails, I kind of ran out of steam. Like the first like 5 ideas were good, but then like 6, 7, 8, 9, freaking just phoning that shit in.
The only time I find myself really properly batch making will be like if I'm on a long flight or something where I'm just like, I've got 7 hours to kill and I'm not tired. So right,
like now I probably do maybe 2 or 3 days in advance. And with doing stuff like this, like podcasts and stuff like that, like as soon as I hit stop on this recording, I can click a button and then AI will just cut these up into nice little social media clips for me. I just then add on a little title and a caption. And from a podcast that is an hour or so long, I can get 30 clips from it if I wanted to use all 30. So and then I did, sorry for people listening, I just whacked my knee on the table. So in the last, I think it's maybe 7 weeks now, I set myself this stupid challenge, which was to basically not say a single word on social media, like verbally.
Oh, really?
Because people come into, say, my group and ask, or like if I put a question box on social media or like Instagram or whatever, guarantee someone would say something, a variation of, can I grow my following, grow my business without talking on camera? Right? Because they don't like doing the whole speech thing. So I always reply back and say, yeah, of course you could, but probably it's better to force yourself to do this because of personality and blah, 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 blah. So I thought, right, okay, fuck it. Can you actually do it? Right? Can you do it? So I kind of had all these little creative ideas about how you could communicate without talking. And actually, it's really boring. I don't know how people do it. I was gagging just to say something. I was like,
words. I like these.
yeah. I just want to say something.
Oh, you can't write it.
Yeah. So in a way, like the restrictive nature of that challenge forced me to be creative. To say, right, okay, how do I be more creative about this sort of thing? But also, I think it like hamstrung me in certain ways. So I can't even remember why I got onto that topic, but that's what.
But also, it's the same thing I said earlier of being like, if I was starting out, I would use myself as a guinea pig and talk about those experiences because then I can have opinions on it that might not have occurred to me before I did it. Like Simon went into it thinking, let's just see if we can grow it. And what he really realized along the way is, fuck me, this is boring, right? Right? I want to speak. I actually like this.
Because what you end up doing if you do is like, I watched yesterday this
the Beatles one.
What?
Or you mean you watched something yesterday?
No, I watched this thing yesterday.
Oh, right. I thought you said I watched the film yesterday. I was like, well, the Beatles one where there wasn't.
No. I watched a reel. It's basically someone reshared a reel. And this woman she took up half the screen and the text took up the other half of the screen. And she was just basically in a room with a window and stuff like that. She had a back to the camera.
A room with a window.
Yeah. I'm being very descriptive. This is specificity and taking what you read in novels and bringing it to your content.
She was in a room with a window. Moving on.
The sun shone through, glistening off every surface.
That's my favorite description I've heard for a while.
She had a back to a camera, right?
Yeah. In my head, just so you know, I'm picturing a kidnapped person in a dark room.
No. It's bright. The windows open. There's light flooding in. It's one of those kind of like New York studios where there's nothing around. Wood floor, white wall,
brick wall. Oh, they got a white wall,
and light pouring in. Whatever, right? She probably rented it for the reel. Anyway, so she got her back to the camera, long black hair, and the entirety of the reel, which when you read the text, you figure out lasts 3 seconds. That's her first trick.
Yeah.
All she does is put on a coat with her back to the camera.
Yep.
That's it. That's all she does. Puts on a coat. And then the text says, I started this account 30 days ago, and I've grown to 217,000 followers without saying a word. you can do it too.
OnlyFans.
Like, this is what, like, you get forced into creating that shit when you don't talk on camera. Because
strong pivot.
what you end up doing is like, how can I communicate this? Right, I know what I'll do. I'll trick people into viewing this. I will, because I'll just put on a coat and then have this text. The text, it's going to take you 20 seconds to read this text.
You're going to
I'm gonna
watch
make
it
a video
8
clip.
times. Yeah.
3 seconds. You'll have watched this 7 times. I'll have racked up the views. Aren't I brilliant? Like, it forces you to create a lot of wanky content, I think. Anyway.
As bad as the old pointing days. Do you remember those days? That doesn't happen now, which is thankful.
I mean, I'm sure like Charlie Chaplin would be he'd have some like real creative ideas if he was around knocking out some silent content. But
I kind of want someone to do that. That's not the worst idea. Like, if I know a good mime level person, then you could make that work.
Yeah,
but I'm not the guy to make it work, but I want to see someone do it.
No, but I mean, I'm sure there are more creative people than this person. But the point being is that I think that what I was trying to say is that you can create content that is silent, but it kind of probably doesn't really get across personality and things like that. And the thing that you want to remember is that Instagram counts a view as 1 millisecond. 1 millisecond. The blink of an eye is 100 milliseconds.
Yeah.
So 1 millisecond is literally like, if the video even like touched the visible part of your screen. So when someone gets 100,000 views, 200,000 views, did they get 200,000 milliseconds? Is that what we're talking about here? Or did they get genuine views? So I think, again, like this thing of like, people, I think these days veer away a little bit from talking on camera because A, they don't like it, and B, it doesn't get all of those nice little triggers like views and stuff like that. But I think it's crucially important to, if you're a coach, especially like fitness, health, business, stuff like that, people are really invested like personally in those things, and it really matters to them. So understanding who you are as a person is really, really important. So I'm going back to talking on camera, basically.
Yeah, that's fair. That doesn't surprise me. Like, people by people and all that cliched stuff exists for a reason. But I think it also reminds me of the thing almost you started the podcast with, of like, is this for everyone? I'm like, if you're starting out thinking, what can I get away with?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you can probably still make it occasionally. Some people will still do it, avoiding things, because people always manage to do that. But the proportion of those people will be smaller. Mm-hmm. And I always think like it's the wrong way to go into approaching anything you want to succeed at.
Yeah, it's like saying, can I build massive quads by just walking on the treadmill?
Yeah, you're like, I might have to do a lot. It's going to be some real hard walking. It's going to be some heavy walking.
It's like my approach to, because I'm a little bit, I'm approaching mid-40s now, and
you look fantastic, so it's fine.
Going to the gym for me is a little bit of a chore right now. I just go through the motions, right? And I joke with my friend who's also a personal trainer, and I tell her, like, my program, I think, that I have right now would sell like freaking hotcakes if I was back being a personal trainer, because it's basically sit down, lie down, muscle. That's what I do. If the exercise does not involve sitting down or lying down, I'm not doing it. So I don't do squats. I'm not doing no deadlifts. I'm not doing no RDLs because there's no sitting down or lying down.
I'm sitting on a chest press machine because I get to sit.
Yes, exactly.
And then I'm fine.
Exactly. Yeah, nice. I'll do a leg curl, but I'm not doing an RDL. Piss off with that.
Walk, sit, and lay your way to a better body today.
Exactly. It's lazy muscle. That's what I'm going for.
There's a theme in your marketing names.
Exactly. Lazy fucker.
Lazylife.com.
But yeah, I mean, if you were someone who wasn't mid-40s and really wanted to really kind of get the most out of your training, you probably wouldn't say, could I get away with building the best physique in the world by not doing
Yeah.
loads of exercises that would really help.
If someone comes to you as a PT and they're like, I want a transformation, but their first sentence is, what's the least I can possibly get away with in order to have this transformation? You do not go, the odds are looking good for this person to have a transformation. You go, this one ain't fucking changing, let's be honest. And
Exactly.
my gut feeling is you would probably find the same thing for a business thing.
Exactly. And on that note, I feel like we should wrap up. We've been doing an hour and a quarter, which is plenty of content for these fools who are listening.
The foie gras and fools, just to bring it back.
Indeed. So, Mr. Standell, if people want to find out how to make some humorous, some specific, voice-laden content, where should we send them to view someone other than yours content?
Yeah, I just enjoyed it. If you weren't watching the video of this, Simon definitely nearly tripped over the word specific and then sort of styled it out.
I was debating whether should I say specificity or should I go specific, and I was like, specificity was.
So it just went real hard on
word. So let's draw.
It just went hard on the ass.
But
specific.
But that's a crucial tip, right? Because if you find you're and ah your way through stuff, pause, style it out.
Or just hold the sound for a while. Specific. And then you've got, that's a weird way of saying it, but it was interesting. I liked what he did. I didn't know where he was going to go because he didn't know where he was going to go.
Tension. That's why.
Yeah, he did it well. So if they want to find someone other than me, I hear Simon Mitchell's all right, but I also hear he's got a penny farthing now and is pretentious with coffee. So fuck him.
Well, I'm just making content where I'm putting on a coat. So come for me. Come to my page if you want that in your life.
I just want you to have like a small stool that you're stepping onto the penny farthing with. I would like that to be one side of the screen. You can have whatever you like down the other side.
I'm literally probably straight after this podcast, I'm going to make a reel, putting on a coat by the window of my office. And I'm going to do it with like a little seductive over the shoulder.
Yeah.
Smolder.
Ooh. Yeah, you should. I'm a fan.
This is not just any reel.
Yeah.
This is a Simon Mitchell.
Simon Mitchell reel. Yeah. Anyone who doesn't know M&S is like, what are they doing? You should do it like in a sleek dress or something though, and then turn and reveal the beard just afterwards. We might be like, sexy body.
Oh yeah, like it'd be like sometimes. Like an appearances can be deceiving. Like, you get bullshit business mentors.
Yeah.
I could get my wife to do like the video from the back, but when it turns around, it's me.
What your mentor sells you versus the reality.
Genius.
There you go. So I actually want to see this bit of content now. So if they want to find me, Instagram is what we've mainly been talking about. So there's the easiest place. Paul_Standell. Just search Paul Standell, Standell, and you will find me there. And please feel free to bug me, annoy me, ask questions, mock Simon. Any of these things will work for me.
For sure. Perfect. Appreciate it, my friend. Thanks for being on. I'm sure we'll have you back very soon.
Pleasure.